Hello and welcome to week 26, Child Protection Procedures. So first of all, let's have a look at the 3 questions for this week. 2.3.1, identify different types of child abuse. 2.3.2, describe the actions to take if a child or young person discloses harm or abuse. And 2.3.3, describe the actions to take in response to concerns that a colleague may be failing to comply with safeguarding procedures or harming, abusing or bullying a child. So all questions about child abuse. So let's have a look and see what to do. So of course, here is a worksheet. We've got 2 worksheets this week. Here's the first one on different types of abuse for 2.3.1, and then a second worksheet here for the other 2 questions. So let's have a look at the first one. If you click on this link here, you'll get to this worksheet. Here's a section on the 3rd page for you to put in your answers. But first of all, there's a bit of information. Let's have a look. Okay, so I've started the child protection section with a quiz for you. You can type in here whether you agree or disagree with each statement. There isn't a right or wrong answer. It's just to get you thinking. But let's have a look at the definitions of child abuse down here. It says, an abused child is a boy or girl under the age of 18 years. Once you're over 18, it's still abuse, but it doesn't come under child abuse. And it says that there are 4 different types: neglect, physical injury, emotional abuse, or sexual abuse. And those are the 4 categories you've got to identify in a minute. Child abuse may be perpetrated by any adult who has a position of trust or authority. So that could be the parents or carers of the child or any other person known to the child. A child may also be the victim of abuse where the abuser is another child, probably in the case of bullying. The scenario where a stranger leaps out of a bush and attacks a child is very unlikely. That's the least common. It's most likely that the child will already know that adult who is abusing them. Child abuse may be the result of direct acts towards the child or the failure of the adult to act. So in the case of neglect, they're not doing anything to the child, they're not caring, they're not providing reasonable care, or both. Abuse doesn't fall into 4 neat little categories. It does for our question, but not in real life. Okay, let's have a look then. I've put here a quiz for you. It's a bit humorous. I hope no one finds that offensive. It's just supposed to give you some little examples for the 4 different types. So if you wanted to, before you start writing your answers, you could decide whether each picture relates to physical, sexual, emotional abuse or neglect. And then when you've decided, I would like you please to use bullet points to identify the 4 different types of abuse. I've started each section for you. So we've got physical abuse. I've given you hitting a child. Please can you put in some more bullet points? Shall we say 5 in each section? Sexual, emotional and neglect. So in each section, you're going to make it up to a total of at least 5 bullet points. That's all there is to that worksheet, just these 4 boxes here. Okay, let's go back to Moodle and see what you've got to help you. If you scroll down to where it says lots of useful information, this link from the NSPCC website has all the information you need for that worksheet. The other 2 links are a bit more information for the second worksheet. So let's have a look at that now. Here's the second worksheet. This is about disclosure. If a child comes to you and tells you they're being abused, that is disclosure. What should you do about it? So if you click on this link here, you'll get to the worksheet for that one. Okay, so we've got some information first and then a scenario that you can choose one of these scenarios, answer these questions, and that's these two criteria covered. So let's have a look at these. So this is the school procedure for what to do if you suspect that a child is being abused. This is not full safeguarding training. It would be good to ask in your school, what training do they offer? Can you take part in the training? They should have given you already the document, Keeping Children Safe in Education. You should have read and signed to say that you've read that document. That sets out all of this information. But let's have a look now. So the school procedure, we've got some do's and some don'ts. Do be an open and approachable person. Find a quiet place to talk. Listen carefully and ask open questions. So I think it says down here, don't force a child to tell you anything and don't ask leading questions. So you might just like to say, are you okay? Has something happened? What has happened? Do you want to talk about it? Don't be saying things like, did daddy hit you? That's a leading question. Then we've got three things. If a child tells you something, you should tell them straight away three things. Tell them that they've done the right thing to tell an adult. Tell them you're going to take what they've told you seriously, and explain that you'll get help, but you might have to involve other adults, maybe a teacher in school, the safeguarding officer, and that other people might get involved. Number 6, write down full records of exactly what was said. They want to make sure in the records that you didn't ask any leading questions, and try and write down exactly what the child said. You don't want any confusion or ambiguity. And then report to the person in school with responsibility for child protection. That will be your safeguarding officer, or if they're not available, there should be a deputy safeguarding officer. Find out who they are in your school. And it says here, number 3, don't promise confidentiality. You can't promise to keep it a secret. Also, don't gossip or pass on information to anyone other than the child protection representative, the safeguarding officer. You can't tell the class teacher. You shouldn't tell another TA. And then finally, it just says here, don't jump to conclusions. Maybe the child's telling you something that gives you cause for concern, but there could be an innocent explanation. However, in order to bring about change for a child, it is better to report your concerns. You have to think of it as the information you've been given as a piece in a jigsaw. And if everybody brings their pieces of jigsaw to the safeguarding officer, then it's up to them. They've had the training. They can know whether they've got enough to put together a big picture of something that's happening to the child. Okay, let's go and look at the worksheet then. So in order to answer this question, I've given you here 4 scenarios. You just need to choose one scenario. So you might choose the first one. I'll tell you what you could do. You could, the scenario that you're going to choose, you could highlight. And then I'll know which one you're talking about. So pick whichever one you like. And then first of all, you can answer this. Can you think of an innocent explanation? So I've chosen A. A 10-year-old boy is reluctant to go home. He says that John is babysitting tonight and he doesn't like the games they play. Well, it could just be that John likes to play chess and the boy doesn't like chess. It could be that the adult plays too roughly for the child. But what possible type of abuse? If the child you ask some open questions and the child tells you a bit more, you might decide you think it's physical abuse. Say why though. Why do you think it's physical? You could give reasons and say why you think it might be sexual abuse. Adults who are carrying out sexual abuse often say to children, this is just a game. It's just It's nothing serious. We're just playing a game. What questions would you ask? So these are your open questions. You could say, don't ask leading questions, but I'd like you to say, what actual questions would you ask? Can you tell me what happened? Why do you think that happened? What sort of games? You'll have to match your questions to each of if you choose a different scenario. The three things that are important to say here come from this list up here. So the important things are 3, 4, and 5. Reassure them they've done the right thing, you're going to take it seriously, and that you can't keep it a secret. You're going to try and get help by telling someone else. So that's your 3 questions here. Oh, sorry. Those are your 3 things that you're going to say to the child here. And who will you report the conversation to? Well, if it's in school, it's your safeguarding officer. If it's out of school, you could, for help and advice, you could ring the NSPCC, and they have helplines for adults to report abuse. Or if a child wanted to report something themselves, they could ring the Childline number. Okay, so that if you answer questions 1 to 5, that will mean that you have covered 2.3.2. Let's have a look at 3.3 now. This is what to do if an adult is abusing a child in school, one of your colleagues, or what if you think, I think I've written it down here, if an adult is abusing a child, we'll do that bit first, or what if you think that somebody in school is not following the procedures, what would you do? So I've answered B for you here because it's straightforward. If a member of staff was abusing a child, I would report this to the safeguarding officer in my school. If you know who it is, you could name them here. You could say, in my school at Hannamore Primary, the safeguarding officer is the head. But what if you felt that the adults in your school were not following the correct procedures? What if you report to the safeguarding officer about a concern that you have, and then a few days or a few weeks later, you realise that the concern has not even been reported and nobody is doing anything about it? Then what are you going to do? Well, I've given you the answers for the second part here. This comes from Louise Burnham, page 53 in the Level 2 textbook, and they give you a best practice checklist. So if you go through these 4 bullet points and put them into your own words, you've got your answer. So if you felt the safeguarding officer, for example, was not doing what they should, you could speak to your line manager or a senior member of the management team. What if the concern was to do with your line manager? What if the head teacher is not reporting safeguarding issues correctly? What are you going to do? Well, the next person to go to would be the chair of governors in your school. You could also have a look at your school or the local authority whistleblowing policy. And on Moodle, I've given you here a link to the government whistleblowing website. You could put a quote in here from the government website. Or if you belong to a union, and you should all belong to a union, especially in difficult times, belonging to a union, they will support you. Find out if they give any advice or support about whistleblowing. So if you put these 4 bullet points, maybe with a quote from a website, or you could find your school whistleblowing policy. You could put the 4 bullet points in here in your own words with a quote, and that's the second worksheet completed. Let's just go back to Moodle here. There's the government whistleblowing website. Maybe I'll put in for you a school whistleblowing policy. I haven't done that yet, but when you come back to it, I'll pop one in here. And if you haven't had any safeguarding training in school yet, you could watch this video, or there's a lot of online safeguarding training that you can do. You could just go online, look up some online training and carry that out. Usually if you do an online qualification, they're free and you'll get a certificate at the end of it. Okay, so 2 worksheets for this week, 4 types of abuse and the disclosing information worksheet. Complete both of those and send them to me.